October 3, 2024. 2:27 a.m. The concierge of Hôtel Le Marais Royale found a man sprawled across the carpet of room 709, eyes open, glass of wine spilled beside him. That man was Raza Hadid, Hamas's elusive tunnel mastermind. 43 seconds later, a black Citroën with diplomatic plates eased to the curb, its headlights dimmed, engine whispering. A pair of men in civilian coats stepped out. Both carried the stillness of those trained to disappear before they're seen. Hadid was the ghost of Gaza's underground war, architect of the tunnels that swallowed Israeli soldiers and rearmed militants under ceasefire smoke. To Hamas, he was a savior. To Mossad, a walking death warrant that had eluded them for 7 years. A single red dot appeared on his room's drape, vanished, then flickered again, barely perceptible amid the rain-blown neon. Down in the hotel bar, a woman stirred her drink, her reflection watching the hallway camera feed on a phone hidden under her scarf. Outside, Paris moved in careless rhythm, laughter, taxis, perfume, the murmur of tourists. But beneath that glitter, something cold was tightening. An invisible hand was drawing a circle that would close before sunrise. At 11:59 p.m., the fire alarm tripped. Guests shuffled out in confusion. Hadid hesitated, grabbed a leather folder and stepped into the corridor. He never saw the man leaning against the exit door, the one who whispered into his sleeve. Target confirmed. Phase 1 green. What unfolded next would turn a Parisian hotel into the silent stage of an operation Israel would never acknowledge, and Hamas would never forgive. If you love real-world espionage, covert missions, and untold intelligence stories, this one's for you. Before we continue, take a second. Drop your city in the comments so we know where you're watching from. And if stories like this fascinate you, the kind where truth hides in the shadows of history, hit like and subscribe so we can reach more curious minds like you. Every click helps us uncover another hidden chapter of the world's silent wars. And trust me, this story is about to go much deeper. Who was Raza Hadid, and why did Mossad chase him across 3 continents? To the world, he was no one. No records, no passport, no family under his name. But beneath the ruins of Gaza, he was called the Engineer of Shadows. Born in Rafah's narrow alleys, Hadid grew up inhaling the dust of conflict. A construction worker by day, he became Hamas's most secret asset by night, designing a labyrinth of underground tunnels so vast, Israeli drones couldn't trace them. Each tunnel meant weapons in, hostages out, and power that could defy an army. For years, Mossad had tried to find him, tracking whispers through Cairo, Beirut, and Istanbul. Each lead vanished in smoke, until one coded message intercepted by Unit 8200 revealed something impossible. Hadid was in Paris, under diplomatic cover, negotiating with a European arms syndicate. That discovery ignited a decision that bypassed politicians and echoed through Tel Aviv's most secretive corridors. Eliminating him would mean decapitating Hamas's tunnel command, but it would also mean conducting a covert kill mission on European soil, risking global outrage if exposed. But who authorized it? Why Paris? And how did an operation designed to look like a simple extraction turn into one of Mossad's most intricate urban hunts? To understand that night, when rain-slicked Parisian streets hid a nation's vengeance, we must first understand the world that created Raza Hadid and the quiet wars fought beneath our feet. By the early 2010s, the Middle East was a pressure cooker of collapsed states, rising militias, and proxy conflicts that blurred borders and allegiances in lethal ways. Western strategies struggled to keep pace with fast-moving regional dynamics and fragmented authority. Israel, surrounded by hostile non-state actors and wary states, prioritized preemption and surgical intelligence to protect its population against asymmetric threats and tunnel warfare. Its doctrine emphasized covert action, technological edge, and surgical strikes without provoking. Palestinian politics were fractious. Hamas governed Gaza with a militant socialist synthesis, while the Palestinian Authority held limited sway in parts of the West Bank. Economic blockades, repeated conflicts, and internecine rivalry hardened networks that outsourced military expertise to clandestine engineers abroad. The broader global stage mattered. U.S. influence waxed and waned amid shifting priorities while Russia and regional powers pursued footholds through proxies. Iran funded militias. Syria's fragmentation created corridors for arms, expertise, and covert transit and networks. European cities, Paris among them, had become chessboards for diaspora politics, fundraising, and low-profile meetings between operatives, technocrats, and smugglers. Intelligence services monitored these nodes closely, but legal constraints and public scrutiny complicated clandestine operations on continental soil during peacetime ambiguity today. Technological change reshaped espionage. Satellite imagery, signals interception, and cyber trails reduced some mysteries while creating new blind spots exploited by human tradecraft. Mossad boosted human and tech surveillance, coordinating with partners to map transnational networks and safehouses invisibly deployed. Tunnel warfare emerged as a tactical equalizer. Designs that moved vertically and horizontally beneath battlefields defied aerial surveillance and neutralized superior firepower. Hamas invested in civilian engineering talent, repurposing construction expertise into offensive logistics and subterranean resilient strategies against sieges routinely. Individuals who designed such systems acquired outsized strategic value. Neutralizing a single mastermind could degrade operational capacity and reshape battlefield outcomes. Therefore, intelligence agencies prioritized identification, cultivation, and when necessary, removal, balancing tactical gains with diplomatic fallout in crowded urban centers. Mossad's history of extraterritorial operations set a precedent. Covert teams executed precision captures, assassinations, and disappearances when states perceived existential threats. Such missions were politically explosive yet operationally discreet, often denied publicly, while altering adversaries' command structures in silence and deterrence. European legal norms constrained kinetic action, forcing agencies to rely on subterfuge, false identities, shell companies, and diplomatic channels to mask intent. Yet transnational criminal networks and lax paperwork sometimes provided cover for logistics, enabling operatives to move people and materiel discreetly. Intelligence tradecraft adapted, surveillance blended physical tails with technical monitoring, and legal advisors walked a tightrope advising plausible deniability and international law. In capitals, diplomats argued consequences while analysts built kill chains, identifying nodes worthy of disruption without igniting open conflict. Regional alliances were fluid. European tolerance for political refugees clashed with homeland security concerns, complicating extradition and intelligence sharing agreements. Meanwhile, rival powers exploited grievances to fund proxies, further muddying attribution and increasing the risk for operatives stationed far from home. Against this tapestry, Raza Hadid's expertise was rare. A blend of engineering knowledge, local networks, and ideological commitment that made him both invaluable and elusive. His designs connected Gaza's logistics to covert supply lines across borders, elevating his strategic value. In short, the backstage war of intelligence and counterinsurgency made a Paris hotel a credible stage for a decisive encounter. Commanders judged removal could cripple tunnel networks, forcing politicians to weigh immediate security against international repercussions and legal risk carefully. Understanding this context explains why operatives crossed borders, why diplomats whispered denials, and why a single hotel corridor could become history's narrow hinge. It was where tactical immediacy met global politics, small acts with outsized consequences, hidden from most until revealed. The operation began inside Mossad's clandestine planning room, where a compact team surrounded a map of central Paris, marking hotel exits, camera arcs, delivery entrances, diplomatic routes, and probable escape lanes, while rain forecasts and streetlight reflections shaped timing for movement and concealment. Knowledge was strictly compartmentalized. Only handlers, surveillance specialists, technical support, and a 4-person entry team received full briefings. Each member issued distinct cover stories and documentation to avoid detectable connections, minimizing risk and ensuring any compromise would remain localized and unlikely to expose broader networks. Signals intelligence provided a crucial break. Intermittent encrypted phone pings triangulated near Avenue George V. Hotel Wi-Fi logs matched a diplomatic access point flagged earlier, and correlation with transport data narrowed the actionable window to a single rainy night when Parisian street noise would mask activity. Human sources augmented tech findings. A bartender noticed late arrivals, A cleaner memorized room numbers, and a translator employed nearby confirmed a conversation in Arabic. These discreet confirmations allowed planners to tighten timelines and reduce false positives before committing to any physical approach inside the hotel. Planners weighed capture versus extraction versus lethal options, ultimately choosing a discreet non-kinetic extraction disguised as a diplomatic logistical transfer. This approach promised removal of operational control without immediate public spectacle, but demanded surgical precision, speed, and complete coordination among every team element on site. Cover logistics required manufactured paperwork, maintenance orders, a courier manifest, and a fabricated diplomatic envelope chain so that unfamiliar faces in hotel corridors at night would be plausible, reducing staff suspicion while providing legal pretext should any official ask about the team's presence. Technical assets were prepared: temporary camera suppressors to blind selected feeds briefly, a small electromagnetic jammer to hinder live cell phone triangulation, and compact audio surveillance kits to evaluate corridor noise before breach, ensuring operatives would not stumble into an unmonitored anomaly or unexpected civilian presence. Operational rehearsals used a mock corridor to practice silent door entries, restraint methods, rapid concealment into a service cart, and synchronized movements through a lobby under fluorescent lighting. These drills refined timing, minimized accidental noise, and instilled reflexive coordination necessary for a flawless, low-visibility transfer. Legal advisors insisted on carefully crafted deniability measures, while political officers prepared contingency messaging. Operators accepted the political risk, arguing operational necessity, and diplomats drafted reactive statements to present to French authorities to shape the narrative should the mission be detected or interrupted publicly. Phase timings were explicit. Phase 1 created a diversion in the lobby to draw attention. Phase 2 executed a silent corridor breach and identification. Phase 3 transferred the subject into a vehicle with diplomatic plates and a modified concealment compartment, all synchronized to minute-by-minute cues. Agents blended into Parisian nightly routines, wearing weather-appropriate civilian clothes and carrying mundane items that matched tourist or worker profiles. This sartorial detail minimized local scrutiny and made operatives indistinguishable from cleaners, delivery personnel, or late-shift staff moving through rain-slicked streets and hotel entrances. The intent favored deception and control rather than brute force. Operatives trained extensively in non-lethal restraint, medical triage, and intermittent interrogation techniques designed to preserve the subject's survival and maximize potential intelligence that could disrupt tunnel operations back in Gaza's network. A secondary monitoring team tracked French police and logistical communications through permissive channels, ready to adapt the extraction route instantly if patrols, checkpoints, or unpredictable traffic patterns emerged, ensuring the primary vehicle would never be trapped in predictable transit corridors vulnerable to discovery or interdiction. Contingency protocols included several contingencies: humane neutralization if capture failed and posed imminent danger, staged accidents to create credible unrelated explanations, and emergency maritime exfiltration through a southern port if continental transit became compromised by legal actions, media exposure, or hostile intervention. Each operative memorized a tight personal narrative to present under scrutiny: tourist, delivery contractor, maintenance staffer, or embassy courier, complete with corroborating documents and rehearsed accents to withstand brief questioning by staff or opportunistic guests looking for explanations after encountering unfamiliar faces. On the night before, teams verified vehicle diplomatic seals, tested modified concealment compartments, confirmed safehouse heat signatures, and checked disposable communications channels. Final equipment checks mimicked rainy conditions to ensure clothing, footwear, and gear would not betray foreign training or unusual movement on slick surfaces. The commander's final briefing emphasized discipline, no unscripted remarks, minimal radio chatter, strict adherence to timelines, and immediate withdrawal on any sign of sustained attention from law enforcement. Each team leader acknowledged the political costs of deviation and accepted responsibility for measured, precise execution. At 22:30, the components dispersed into Paris with roles-locked surveillance teams to vantage points entry teams approaching the hotel, under manufactured reasons, and extraction drivers idling at predetermined intervals. The operation moved like a quiet gear mechanism designed to close around its designated target with surgical timing. January 15th, 02:12 a.m. Room 908's corridor smelled of wet carpet, heated air, and distant diesel. Surveillance feed showed Hadid alone, window curtains half drawn. Outside, a delivery cart rattled. Inside, shadows smoothed into deliberate shapes. Timing depended on synchronized footfalls. At 02:18, Phase 1 began. A staged power trip plunged part of the floor into fluorescent flicker. Lobby noise amplified. Guests murmured. Elevators hummed uncertainly. Two operatives created a distraction near the concierge while others moved toward service corridors, breathing measured. A cleaner's trolley blocked a narrow camera angle as an operative, posing as maintenance, glided past. Another technician used a handheld device to mute a specific feed for 90 seconds. Those seconds were rehearsed into muscle memory, bought with precision. At year 02:25, the entry team reached the 9th floor service door. A coded knock sequence matched hotel staff routines. The lock responded. They moved swiftly, gloved hands, soft-soled shoes, compressing time into rehearsed choreography as the hallway clock ticked toward the decisive moment. Inside room 908, Hadid reviewed blueprints by lamplight, unaware a shadow paused in the corridor. The team's identification process used whispered phrases and photographic confirmation, minimizing mistaken identity. At 02:29, the lead operative peered through the peephole and signaled green. Door opened with a soft click, no shout, no crash. Two operatives slipped in under pretense of hotel maintenance, hands up in compliance gestures, voices low, offering water and paperwork as cover. Hadid, startled, kept composure. Curiosity outweighed suspicion for now. An operative produced a diplomatic envelope, citing a delayed embassy courier. Hadid inspected the seal as a practiced gesture, then accepted the paper trail. This small ritual reduced resistance and created legal ambiguity, enabling agents to close distance without escalation. At 02:35, the team signaled Phase 2, a restraint maneuver practiced to be humane yet decisive. Soft cuffs, controlled pressure points, and immediate medical checks ensured minimal trauma. Hadid offered no fistfight. Surprise and exhaustion made compliance near automatic and silent. Operatives guided him into a stacked service cart used for linen, masking his silhouette beneath towels and crates. Heartbeats synced to the corridor's HVAC hum. Final confirmation validated identity. A foil-sealed bag with passport and devices was secured for forensics. Extraction route unfolded. A discreet elevator ride to basement service levels, a quick transfer to a nondescript van, and diplomatic convoy route plotted to avoid checkpoints. Drivers synchronized watches. Signals passed via short-range radios on prearranged tones to minimize detection. At 02:46, a French night patrol diverted unexpectedly near the hotel. Surveillance adjusted. The extraction timeline slipped 3 minutes. Commanders on site considered aborting, but opted for contained adaptation, rerouting through a back alley and delaying elevator descent by 1 cycle instead. The van idled under a soft streetlight, diplomatic plates half obscured by rain. A shadowy sedan monitored rear approaches. Inside, Hadid lay silent, muffled by linen. Agents tracked his breathing, whispered reassurances, and prepared sedatives in case of panic during transit. Watches read 03:02 as the convoy crossed the Seine's quieter stretches. Street cameras briefly cut to a municipal feed for maintenance, a pre-planned window. Every signal was timed. Traffic lights, guard rotations, even a late bus's predictable route provided camouflage. At 03:15, Intelligence HQ confirmed far-field monitors detected no abnormal international chatter. Command felt cautious optimism. The team slowed near an industrial dock, transferring Hadid to a larger transport disguised as embassy cargo. Crates of medical supplies masked the temporary compartment. An unplanned noise, a container dropped, echoed across the quay. 2 port workers shouted. Movement registered on perimeter cameras. For 30 heartbeats, the operation teetered. The commanders chose discretion. Lights dimmed within the transport, noise barriers deployed, and the convoy resumed slowly. Hours later, at 06:10, the transport docked at a southern port. A naval liaison coordinated discreet transfer to a vessel flagged to a registry. Weather blurred horizons. Agents wore maritime coveralls. The final sea leg offered fewer checkpoints, reducing exposure. At 09 hour, as dawn stained the horizon, the vessel slipped into open water. Brief onboard debriefs collected initial intelligence. Hadid, sedated but lucid, answered limited questions about tunnel schematics and recent contacts. Every answer was recorded, encrypted for analysts ashore. By noon, analysts identified changes to Gaza's tunnel ingress points that could be surveilled and interdicted. Planners shifted focus from immediate elimination to long-term disruption. Mapping supply lines and black market contacts revealed in Hadid's notes became targets for follow-up covert actions. Back in Tel Aviv, political staff debated public messaging while intelligence briefed ministers on legal calculations. The mission's success provided crucial leverage, but created diplomatic obligations. Officials prepared deniable statements, legal notes, and contingency plans for potential exposure in courts. Mission outcome. By 14th File, Operational Command declared the extraction successful. Hadid was removed from immediate operational control. His capture yielded intelligence that would, in months, enable targeted interdictions of materials and personnel tied to Gaza's subterranean network. By dawn, Paris woke to whispers. Hotel staff puzzled by unexplained traffic, guests murmuring about a late-night disturbance, and police logging an unusual diplomatic convoy departure near Avenue George V, notes that would ripple through intelligence circles and rumor networks. A terse statement from French police acknowledged an ongoing inquiry, stressing procedural confidentiality. Israeli spokespeople remained silent, issuing no confirmation nor denial, while anonymous officials hinted at a significant intelligence breakthrough that would immediately reshape operational planning against subterranean networks. News feeds filled with speculative threads. Pundits debated legality and sovereignty. Commentators raised alarms about foreign operations on metropolitan soil, while social platforms amplified eyewitness accounts, forged documents, and conflicting photographs that muddied timelines and rapidly heightened diplomatic anxiety between capitals. Hamas issued an angry communiqué describing an attack on its network, denouncing foreign aggression and vowing retaliation. Leaders framed the incident as proof of ongoing targeting of Palestinian infrastructure and mobilized sympathizers to rally media, legal, and political resources internationally. In Jerusalem, ministers received classified briefings. Military analysts praised the tactical intelligence yield, while diplomatic teams cautioned against public disclosure that could complicate relations with European partners, emphasizing careful messaging to preserve plausible deniability and avoid escalation in sensitive forums. Within days, law enforcement in multiple countries executed search warrants targeting suspected procurement networks. Banks froze suspicious accounts, and a handful of low-level facilitators were detained, their interrogations promising leads that could unravel supply channels directly feeding Gaza's subterranean projects. European politicians faced pressure. Opposition leaders condemned covert foreign actions, civil liberties groups questioned surveillance overreach, and ministers promised inquiries. The episode drove a fractious debate about balancing counterterrorism with sovereignty, legal oversight, and diplomatic norms across national parliaments broadly. Conspiracy narratives proliferated. Leaked audio, doctored images, and anonymous tip lines fed competing stories about complicity, rogue elements, or state sanction. Each narrative shaped public opinion differently, complicating official investigations and amplifying mistrust between intelligence services and civil society domestically. Hamas framed the capture as martyrdom and heroism, flooding networks with curated images, evocative speeches, and fundraising appeals. Community organizers coordinated vigils, while hardliners used the event to bolster recruitment narratives, emphasizing resistance and technological ingenuity against perceived occupier forces. Legal scholars debated jurisdictional reach. Could a foreign clandestine capture on metropolitan soil qualify as kidnapping or legitimate counterterrorism under international law? Courts, defenders, and prosecutors began compiling frameworks for possible extradition, diplomatic immunity claims, and transnational criminal liability carefully. Within intelligence communities, operatives celebrated the tactical win privately, but senior analysts cautioned against complacency, stressing that one capture would not end tunnel engineering. Follow-up operations, surveillance, and patience would be necessary to translate immediate success into sustained strategic advantage. Public opinion hardened along existing fault lines. Some hailed the operation as essential defense, applauding action. Others warned of moral cost and diplomatic fallout, arguing that covert killings abroad risked international isolation and emboldened adversaries to portray Israel as lawless. By week's end, an anxious quiet settled across diplomatic backchannels. Investigations continued, covert follow-ups planned discreetly, and civilians resumed routines, though many watched hotel corridors and embassy vehicles with renewed suspicion, knowing modern wars could erupt inside everyday public spaces now. In the weeks following the Paris operation, the story began to fracture. Official records remained sealed, and every retelling contradicted the last. It was no longer an operation. It became legend, each version reflecting the agenda of those repeating it. The Israeli narrative, circulated quietly among Allied briefings, described a clean surgical intelligence success. No shots fired, no casualties. A flawless extraction that neutralized a key architect of Hamas's tunnel network. Diplomats privately called it a masterpiece of precision diplomacy. But European intelligence sources disagreed. Some claimed Hadid was never captured alive. They insisted an altercation occurred in the hotel corridor, quick, brutal, and fatal. According to this account, Mossad agents staged a disappearance using emergency medical transport as camouflage. Another version, allegedly leaked by a former French counter-terrorism officer, suggested Parisian authorities were tipped off mid-operation but chose to look away, preferring silence over confrontation. France had long cooperated quietly with foreign services when discretion served stability. Palestinian accounts told an entirely different story. They claimed Raza Hadid anticipated his hunters, leaving a decoy in Paris while escaping via Istanbul days earlier. In this version, Mossad captured an engineer's double, not the real mastermind behind Gaza's tunnels. Anonymous footage later surfaced online. Grainy elevator footage of men in maintenance uniforms, timestamped the night of the operation. Investigators confirmed it was genuine but inconclusive. No faces clear enough to identify, no proof of Hadid's fate, only silence and speculation afterward. Meanwhile, a French parliamentary subcommittee pressed for answers about violations of sovereignty and intelligence overreach. Ministers offered evasive statements. Files disappeared. The investigation dissolved quietly months later, replaced with diplomatic dinners and unspoken apologies between embassies, restoring calm without clarity. Independent researchers tried reconstructing timelines through leaked communications, but encrypted data and fabricated sources blurred truth. Some theorized the operation was exaggerated, even invented, to intimidate militants, an elaborate psychological warfare campaign disguised as a factual success story. Ethical debates erupted within Israel's own academic circles. Professors questioned whether targeted abductions in neutral nations eroded the moral foundation of security policy. Can a democracy remain pure while defending itself through shadows? Asked one retired intelligence ethicist in Tel Aviv. Others countered, survival demands what purity forbids. For them, the Paris mission represented a necessary, reluctant evil, proof that restraint in asymmetric conflict invites vulnerability, and only decisive, deniable action maintains deterrence. Between these two poles lay the real dilemma of modern espionage. Diplomatic cables hinted at backdoor settlements, compensation for disrupted operations, confidential assurances to French authorities, and unspoken trade-offs between intelligence cooperation and public amnesia. Europe's governments, facing terrorism fears, preferred closure over confrontation, burying controversy beneath bureaucratic dust. Media narratives mutated over time. Documentaries dramatized events with fictional composites. Anonymous insiders published memoirs that blended truth and invention. The line between evidence and embellishment dissolved, feeding a global appetite for spy intrigue more than historical accuracy or accountability. Even within Hamas's circles, contradictions deepened. Some insisted Hadid was martyred, others whispered he lived under protection in a friendly state, continuing his designs underground. His supposed reappearances, grainy photos from Istanbul, blurred faces in Amman, kept the myth alive and useful. Years later, declassified documents referenced Subject 908, status, indeterminate. Intelligence historians debated whether that meant dead, detained, or disappeared. None agreed. The operation remained an inkblot test of belief, each faction seeing validation for its version of justice and truth. What truly happened inside room 908 may never be known. Perhaps that's the point. In the world of espionage, uncertainty itself becomes a weapon, one that can frighten enemies, protect allies, and keep history safely trapped between denial and myth. Militarily, the operation reshaped the balance underground. Within months, Israel detected decreased tunneling activity and intercepted fewer shipments of reinforced steel, fuel, and explosives. The capture, or elimination, of Raza Hadid disrupted Gaza's subterranean chain of command more than any airstrike ever had. Operational analysts credited the mission with severing communication lines between Hamas's engineering wing and its suppliers. Without Hadid's mathematical precision and logistical discipline, new tunnels collapsed prematurely. Smugglers, once confident, hesitated to move cargo under increased digital and human surveillance simultaneously coordinated region-wide. Strategically, Mossad's victory reinforced Israel's doctrine of long-reach deterrence, the notion that geography offers no sanctuary. Adversaries learned that even foreign soil, be it Paris, Amman, or Kuala Lumpur, could no longer guarantee anonymity or immunity for key operatives anymore. For Hamas, the blow was both symbolic and structural. The organization shifted resources toward cyber operations and drone procurement, temporarily halting large-scale excavation projects. Engineers sought redundancy and compartmentalization to prevent single-point failures from paralyzing entire tactical networks unexpectedly under pressure. Internationally, the fallout was double-edged. Allies admired Mossad's reach and precision, but diplomats lamented the precedent of extraterritorial abduction in a NATO member state. Trust wavered quietly, and intelligence-sharing agreements were renegotiated with clauses emphasizing notification, oversight, and mutual accountability. In Europe, internal intelligence services reassessed their vulnerabilities. New interagency protocols emerged: surveillance of dual-purpose engineering firms, cross-border watch lists for procurement patterns, and restrictions on diplomatic transport exemptions, subtle bureaucratic ripples born from one silent night's unacknowledged operation. Meanwhile, Iran and Hezbollah interpreted the Paris episode as escalation. They invested heavily in counter-surveillance, new safe-house architecture, and decoy operations designed to confuse pattern recognition. Shadow wars multiplied, transforming quiet European suburbs into unmarked fronts of rival intelligence operations. Inside Israel's defense establishment, analysts debated whether tactical brilliance outweighed diplomatic cost. The Paris mission was celebrated internally as a symphony of precision, but others cautioned that every covert triumph erodes another layer of international legitimacy, risking isolation and backlash globally. France, though publicly silent, recalibrated its internal counterintelligence priorities. Covert cooperation with Israel continued under deeper secrecy, accompanied by greater caution. Politicians demanded tighter vetting of friendly missions, insisting that partnerships must never bypass national consent again, even for aligned security goals. Economically, the mission's intelligence harvest produced measurable results. Intercepted shipments, seized accounts, dismantled intermediaries. Arms trafficking profitability dropped, forcing militants to rely on costlier, riskier suppliers. Gradually, economic strain replaced kinetic destruction as a new weapon in Israel's asymmetric strategy effectively. Academics later likened the operation's effects to a chessboard shift, one key piece removed, forcing adversaries into reactive defense. But chess analogies obscured the chaos of espionage, where unseen hands move pieces, remove them, or rewrite the board entirely. Publicly, Israel denied all involvement, maintaining the ambiguity essential to its deterrence image. Ambiguity nurtured myth, myth nurtured fear, and fear itself became a strategic asset, deterring action without explicit threats, a weapon as effective as bullets or drones consistently. Inside Hamas, Factional blame began. Rival commanders accused one another of leaks and betrayal. Trust frayed. Engineers operated in isolation, paranoia replacing collaboration. Even without further strikes, the psychological effect achieved what military pressure often couldn't: fragmentation within adversarial command. In intelligence circles worldwide, the Paris precedent became shorthand for bold covert precision, with heavy political collateral. Courses at military academies analyzed it not for its tactics, but for its consequences. The invisible costs paid in diplomacy, perception, and legitimacy afterward. Ultimately, Mossad's triumph carried paradox. Operational perfection born from moral compromise. The mission achieved every objective except silence. Whispers endured, distrust grew, and the world's shadow wars edged closer to daylight, where precision loses purity, and victory demands forgetting what made it possible. Years later, the Paris operation, unofficially dubbed Operation Marée Noire, became a ghost in global intelligence folklore. It was never confirmed, never denied, yet studied in whispers by officers and historians as a model of precision balanced on moral quicksand. In Israeli defense circles, the operation's files remained sealed under national security clauses. But inside training academies, instructors referenced the hotel doctrine, the principle that a perfect mission leaves no sound, no witnesses, and no definitive version of events ever. For Mossad veterans, it symbolized the agency's zenith: coordinated timing, flawless execution, and high-value extraction without open conflict. But younger operatives viewed it differently, a haunting reminder that invisible victories still leave visible scars in public trust worldwide. In Gaza, Raza Hadid's name became legend. His story was reshaped by propaganda into that of a martyr engineer, immortalized on murals, his tunnels mythologized as monuments of defiance. Even those doubting his survival used his name as symbol of continuity. Western filmmakers soon discovered the story's cinematic allure. Streaming documentaries dramatized the Paris disappearance, blending reenactment with speculation. Former intelligence officers, disguised by shadow, offered contradictory testimony, each version feeding an audience hungry for mystery, not necessarily truth anymore. Intelligence theorists debated its doctrinal implications. Some argued Marée Noire proved covert action's necessity in hybrid warfare. Others warned that normalizing extraterritorial abductions eroded global norms, turning diplomacy into theater and allies into nervous observers unwilling to fully trust. Moral philosophers questioned the cost. If security depends on secrecy and deception, does victory dilute justice? Could an operation that preserved lives simultaneously corrode the very ethics it claimed to defend? Silence offered no easy reconciliation, only uneasy pragmatism. Inside Israel, internal oversight commissions convened periodically to reassess long-term effects. Economically, yes, the tunnels weakened. Diplomatically, fissures widened. The silent ripple touched embassies, trade corridors, and international courts, embedding new caution into every subsequent operation approval indefinitely. Among Hamas sympathizers, conspiracy endured. Some believed Hadid still operated from exile, guiding successors remotely. Others claimed he'd been recruited secretly, working now as double agent. A myth sustained because truth, either way, served someone's purpose amid perpetual conflict inevitably. Universities across Europe began including Marée Noire in ethics and geopolitics curricula, an emblem of the 21st century's blurred lines between legality and necessity. Students debated not who was right, but whether rightness could survive under intelligence imperatives anymore. Books followed, speculative and self-assured. Former operatives published fictionalized accounts whose redactions spoke louder than their words. The operation evolved into modern myth, half morality tale, half warning, forever looping between glory and guilt without final verdict decided. To some, it remained proof of Israel's unmatched reach. To others, a scar on European sovereignty. Its success secured short-term safety, yet deepened the world's mistrust of hidden power, reminding all nations that protection, when unchecked, breeds its own quiet dangers always. And somewhere in intelligence archives, a final notation in fading ink. Operation concluded. Outcome effective. Political cost. unrecoverable. History would not erase the mission, but neither would it absolve it. Its legend survived, because legends need no confirmation to endure ever again. So what truly changed that night in Paris? One man vanished, a network faltered, and for a fleeting moment, a nation felt safer. But safety born from shadows carries a debt, a silence that grows heavier with every retelling inevitably. Tactically, Mossad won. Strategically, the world lost another layer of transparency. The line between justice and necessity blurred once more, proving that even the most surgical operation leaves invisible wounds, in law, in trust, and in the conscience of nations overall. The tunnels slowed, but hatred deepened. Engineers became martyrs, agents became ghosts, and truth became negotiable currency. The more perfect the mission, the more imperfect its memory. Intelligence victories rarely echo cleanly in the light of history today. Some say Hadid's name still circulates on encrypted forums, a signature, a myth, perhaps a lesson. Whether dead, captured, or free, his shadow continues to tunnel beneath politics, reminding both hunter and hunted that secrecy never truly ends ultimately. In classrooms and command centers alike, Operation Marais Noir remains both template and warning. Precision without restraint, justice without trial, silence without closure. The operation succeeded, but at what cost to the ideals that define those who executed it forever? Maybe that's the haunting truth of espionage. Nations survive by doing what they cannot admit. And every unacknowledged victory becomes another secret too heavy for history to carry, without distortion or consequence in its fragile moral architecture. As Paris returned to its rhythm, lights flickering, rain falling, laughter spilling from cafes, the world moved on. Yet somewhere, deep inside intelligence vaults, the echoes of that night still hum beneath classified locks, waiting to resurface as cautionary whisper stories. Because in the end, every nation must choose, defend its people or defend its principles. Rarely can it do both perfectly. And that's where the shadows begin, the quiet spaces between survival and soul, between victory and remorse unendingly. If this story fascinated you, subscribe and turn on the bell. We're just getting started. More hidden wars, untold missions, and forgotten operatives await in the next story. Your curiosity keeps these secrets alive, until truth finally catches up.